The night my parents threw me out, I had 10 minutes to pack everything I owned and disappear from their perfect life forever. My name is Eva Carter, and this is the story of how being abandoned at 17 led me to discover what family really means and how 24 years later, I made sure the people who tried to erase me could never touch what I had built. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and justice. I was 17 years old, standing in the marble foyer of my parents' mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, when my father, Richard Carter, looked at me with eyes colder than winter glass and said the words that would change everything. He said, "You have brought shame to this family. You are no longer my daughter." My mother, Helen, stood beside him, her perfectly manicured hands clutched around her pearl necklace, the same necklace she wore to every charity gala, where she smiled for cameras and pretended to care about helping troubled youth. I was 3 months pregnant. The father was Anthony Dawson, my boyfriend of 2 years, the golden boy from another wealthy family. When I told him about the baby, he looked at me like I had just destroyed his future. He said, "This wasn't supposed to happen. I have college, law school. I can't do this." Then he walked away. Just like that. 3 days later, his parents moved him to California. For early admission at Stanford, they paid to make him disappear from the problem. But I couldn't disappear. I was the problem. My father's voice cut through my memories. He said, 10 minutes, pack what you can carry. If you're not gone by then, I'll have security remove you." I looked at my mother, hoping for something, anything, a crack in her perfect facade. She said, "You made your choice, Ava. We have a reputation to protect. The Dawsons have already left town. We've told our friends you're studying abroad." Studying abroad? The lie they would tell at the country club, at church, at father's corporate dinners. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom for the last time. My hands shook as I pulled a suitcase from my closet. What do you pack when your entire life is being erased? I grabbed clothes and a photo of my grandmother, who had passed away the year before. She was the only one who might have stood by me. I also took the savings account, passbook with $3,000 from birthdays and summer jobs. That was all I had now. When I came back downstairs, my father was waiting with his arms crossed. My mother had already disappeared into her sitting room. She couldn't even watch. He said, "Leave your house key and your credit cards on the table." I set them down, my fingers numb. He said, "If you contact anyone in our social circle, if you try to damage our reputation, I will make sure you regret it. We have lawyers. We have influence. You are nothing." I picked up my suitcase and walked out the front door into the October night. Behind me, I heard the door close. Then the lock turned. The sound of that lock clicking into place is something I still hear sometimes. Even now, 24 years later, I walked for 2 hours through neighborhoods where every house cost millions, where families gathered around dinner tables and told each other about their days. Normal families, families that didn't throw away their children. By the time I reached downtown Greenwich, it was nearly midnight. I was exhausted, terrified, and at $3,000 between me and homelessness, I found a bench outside the courthouse and sat down. The building was dark except for security lights. I started to cry, not quiet tears, desperate, gasping sobs that I couldn't control. A woman said, "Young lady, are you hurt?" And everything changed. I looked up through my tears and saw a woman in her 60s, elegant despite the late hour, carrying a briefcase and wearing a long coat against the cold. Her gray hair was pulled back, and her dark eyes showed concern, not judgment. I tried to speak but could only shake my head. She said, "My name is Miriam Hale. I'm a judge." Well, I was. "I just finished my last case today before retirement. Are you in trouble?" Something about her voice, firm but kind, made me trust her. I told her everything: the pregnancy, Anthony leaving, my parents' ultimatum, the suitcase, the locked door. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I've seen a lot in 30 years on the bench. Parents who abandon their children because of pregnancy, addiction, sexuality, any reason that threatens their comfortable worldview. It never stops shocking me." She said, "I live alone in a house with 4 bedrooms. My husband passed away 10 years ago. My children are grown and living their own lives. They're going to come home with me tonight and tomorrow. We'll figure out what comes next." I said, "I can't. I don't even know you." She said, "You're 17, pregnant, and it's midnight. You don't have many options. I'm offering you one. Take it." So I did. Her house was a Victorian in the historic district. Nothing like my parents' cold mansion. It was warm, lived in. The walls were covered with photos of her children, her late husband, her grandchildren, books everywhere, a piano in the corner. She made me tea and toast. She showed me to a guest room with a quilt on the bed, and told me to get some rest. I said, "Why are you helping me?" she said, because someone helped me once, when I was young. And the world seemed impossible, because I believe in paying forward what was given to me. And because, Eva, you deserve better than what they gave you. I slept that night for the first time in weeks without nightmares. The next morning, Miriam sat me down at her kitchen table. She said, here's what we're going to do. First, you're going to see a doctor and make sure you and the baby are healthy. Second, you're going to finish high school. I've already called the principal of the public school, and you can enroll Monday. Third, we're going to talk about your future, college, career, everything. I said, I can't pay you back. She said, I don't want your money, Eva. I want you to survive this. I want you to thrive. And someday when you're able, I want you to help someone else the way I'm helping you. Over the next few months, Miriam became the mother I should have had. She drove me to prenatal appointments. She helped me study for my final exams. She sat with me when I was scared and reminded me I was stronger than I knew. She also did something else, something I wouldn't fully understand until much later. One afternoon in her study, she explained it to me. She said, I'm setting up a trust fund for you and your baby. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to give you both security. However, there's something important you need to understand. She handed me a legal document. She said this trust has exclusion clauses. That means certain people can never inherit from it, never receive financial benefit from it, never contest it. Your parents Richard and Helen Carter are excluded. Anthony Dawson is excluded. If they ever try to claim they deserve part of this money because of blood relation, the law will stop them. She said, I've spent 30 years in family court, watching parents suddenly reappear when money is involved. When their abandoned children succeed, this ensures they can't profit from your success or Noah's success. I said, you really think they'd come back? She said, people do terrible things when money or reputation is at stake. The trust protects you financially. If they try to harass you or force contact, we can pursue restraining orders and no contact orders through the courts. That's separate from the trust, but equally important. You'll have every legal tool available. I gave birth to Noah in April. Miriam was in the delivery room, holding my hand, telling me I could do this. And I did. My son was perfect. Dark hair, curious eyes, strong lungs. When they placed him in my arms, I made him a promise. I promised him I would give him everything my parents never gave me. Love, support, a home where he would always belong. Miriam was there for all of it. The sleepless nights, the first smile, the first steps. She was his grandmother in every way that mattered. I graduated high school on time, with honors, while taking care of an infant. Miriam watched Noah during my classes. She taught me about strength I didn't know I had. At graduation, when they called my name, I walked across that stage alone. No family in the audience except Miriam and baby Noah. But it was enough. It was everything. I enrolled at the University of Connecticut, using scholarships and the trust fund. I studied social work and advocacy. I wanted to help people like me, people the system failed, people who needed someone to believe in them. During college, I met Liam Bennett in a legal aid clinic, where I was volunteering. He was a law student, passionate about family justice. We became friends first, then something more. He knew my whole story. He loved Noah from the beginning. When Noah was 5, Liam and I got married in Miriam's garden. Miriam officiated, of course she did. Noah grew up knowing Miriam as grandma. He learned to read sitting in her lap. She taught him about justice, about standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. She told him stories about her cases, about people who needed advocates. When Noah was 14, he told me he wanted to be a prosecutor. He said, Mom, you help people before the system hurts them. I want to help people after. I want to make sure bad people face consequences. Miriam beamed with pride. By then, I had a master's degree. I was running a nonprofit supporting young mothers in crisis. Liam was working as a defense attorney, and we had built a life together, a real life, nothing like the hollow perfection of the world I'd left behind. Miriam passed away when Noah was 20. Cancer took her quickly, more quickly than we were ready for. The last thing she said to me was in the hospital 2 days before the end. She said, Eva, you took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something beautiful. Noah is extraordinary. You did that, not me. You. I said, I couldn't have done it without you. She said, that's what family does. Remember that? Family isn't blood. Family is choice. Family is showing up. After she died, we found video recordings she had made. Messages for Noah. Messages for me. Legal instructions. And documents. So many documents carefully organized about the trust, about the exclusion clauses, about why she had put those protections in place. She had known. Somehow, she had known that one day my past would try to reclaim my present. 4 years after Miriam's death, Noah graduated from law school at the top of his class. He became an assistant district attorney in the county, specializing in corruption and environmental crime. He was 24, driven, brilliant, and completely dedicated to justice. He had Miriam's fire and my determination. Liam and I watched him in court once, prosecuting a corporate executive for falsifying environmental impact reports. Noah was relentless. The defendant's expensive lawyers tried every trick. Noah dismantled them piece by piece with evidence, precedent, and a moral clarity that left no room for doubt. The jury convicted. 6 felony counts. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, a reporter asked Noah about his success rate. He said, "I don't do this for statistics. I do this because my mother taught me that the most important thing you can do is stand up for people who have no voice. My grandmother taught me that justice isn't about power, it's about truth." I watched the interview online that night. Liam held my hand. He said, "Miriam would be so proud." I said, "She is. Wherever she is, she knows." But Noah's success came with attention, media coverage, public recognition, his face in the newspaper, his cases featured on local news programs, and that attention reached people I thought I would never hear from again. It started with a letter, hand-delivered to my office at the nonprofit. The envelope was expensive, cream-colored linen paper, my name written in my mother's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single card. "Eva, we've made terrible mistakes. We want to make amends. We want to know our grandson. Please call us, Mom and Dad." Below were phone numbers, an email address, a return address in Greenwich, the same house, the same people who had thrown me out with 10 minutes to pack. I showed the letter to Liam that night. He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Nothing. They're 24 years too late." But the letters kept coming, then flowers, then phone calls to my work line that I didn't answer. Then it escalated. I was at a city council meeting about funding for youth programs when I saw them. My parents, Richard and Helen Carter, sitting in the back row, watching me present. After the meeting, they approached. My father looked older, grayer, but his eyes held the same cold calculation I remembered. He said, "Eva, you look well. We're so proud of what you've accomplished." My mother touched my arm. I stepped back. She said, "We've missed so much. We were wrong. We want to be part of your life again. Part of Noah's life." I said, "You don't get to decide that. You lost that right when you locked the door behind me." My father said, "People change. We've changed. We go to therapy now. We've talked to our pastor. We want to make this right." I said, "Stay away from my son. Stay away from my family." I walked away, but they didn't stop. They started showing up at Noah's courthouse, sitting in the gallery during his trials. They contacted the media. They gave interviews to Karen Fuller, an investigative journalist, about being estranged from their daughter and grandson, about wanting reconciliation. The articles were manipulative masterpieces. They painted themselves as heartbroken grandparents, shut out by an unforgiving daughter. They talked about their charitable work, their community involvement, their deep regrets. They even mentioned grandparents' rights, though Liam quickly explained that Noah was an adult now, and in most states, grandparents can only petition for visitation if they had an established relationship with the child, and if denial would cause harm. They had neither. The public ate up their story anyway. Social media debated whether I was being cruel, whether everyone deserves forgiveness. Then Anthony Dawson reappeared. Noah came home one night, shaken. He said, "Mom, a man approached me after court today. He said his name was Anthony Dawson. He said he was my biological father. He wants to meet me." My hands went cold. I said, "What did you tell him?" He said, "I told him my father is Liam Bennett. I told him biology means nothing without presence." Noah looked at me. He said, "But Mom, he knew things. About me, about my cases. He's been following my career. He said he's been watching me for years, waiting for the right time." The right time. Now that Noah was successful, now that there was something to gain, Liam ran a background check. Anthony Dawson had become a corporate consultant. He worked in public relations and crisis management, and his current client was Richard Carter's company. They were working together. My parents and the man who had abandoned me. They had formed an alliance. The harassment continued. Flowers at my office, messages through staff, uninvited appearances at events, all calculated to make me look unreasonable. Liam filed for restraining orders. We documented every unwanted contact, every instance of them appearing where they weren't invited. The courts moved slowly, but we were building a case. Liam and I spent 3 days going through everything Miriam had left us: the trust documents, the exclusion clauses, the abandonment paperwork, every protection she had put in place. Liam spread the papers across our dining room table. He said, "It is airtight. The trust specifically excludes Richard Carter, Helen Carter and Anthony Dawson from receiving any financial benefit or inheritance. It includes documentation of abandonment, witness statements from the night you were thrown out, medical records showing you received no family support during pregnancy, he said. Miriam also included something else, recorded testimony. She filed it with her estate lawyer. It's a video deposition explaining exactly why these exclusions exist and what she witnessed. We played the video. Miriam sat in her study, the same room where she had explained the trust to me years before. She said, "My name is Miriam Hale. I am a retired judge of 30 years. I am making this statement to ensure that certain parties understand they have no legal or moral claim to Eva Carter's trust or her son Noah's inheritance." She said, "On October 21, 2001, I found Eva Carter, 17 years old and pregnant, abandoned on a courthouse bench at midnight. She had been thrown out of her family home by Richard and Helen Carter. She was alone, terrified, and had nowhere to go. She said, I took Eva in. I witnessed her strength as she completed high school, gave birth, and built a life for herself and her child. She did this without any support from those who should have supported her." She said his trust fund and its exclusions exist to protect Eva and Noah financially from those who abandoned them. If you are watching this, it means someone has tried to challenge these protections. I want them to know that I spent 30 years studying family law, and I made certain these exclusions are unbreakable. She looked directly into the camera. She said, "Richard, Helen, Anthony, you had your chance. You threw it away. You don't get another one." Liam turned off the video. He said, "And we need to make this public, before they control the narrative any further." I said, "How?" He said, "Noah has a major case coming up, the corporate corruption trial against Meridian Industries. The mayor is presenting him with a civic award next month for his prosecution work. There will be press, city officials. It will be very public." I said, "You think they'll try something there?" He said, "I know they will. They want to force a public reunion, claim Noah as their grandson in front of cameras." I said, "Then we'll be ready. We were not setting a trap. We were setting the truth on a stage." The Civic Awards ceremony took place on a Tuesday evening at City Hall. The main chamber was packed with reporters, city officials, attorneys, and community leaders. Mayor Linda Reyes was presiding. Noah sat at the front in his suit, humble despite the attention. Liam and I sat 3 rows back. I had copies of the documents in my bag, the trust paperwork, the abandonment records, Miriam's video on a flash drive. I had also called Karen Fuller, the investigative journalist. I told her there was a story behind the story, and if she wanted the truth, she should be at this ceremony with her camera ready. I had spoken with the mayor's staff earlier that week. I explained there might be a disruption and that I had documentary evidence to share. They approved a brief use of the audio-visual system if needed. Mayor Reyes spoke first, praising Noah's dedication to justice, his successful prosecution rate, his commitment to holding the powerful accountable. Then she invited Noah to the podium. He spoke about Miriam, about the lessons she taught him, about my strength as a single mother who had built something from nothing, about Liam who chose to be his father when biology offered him no obligation. He said, "Family is not about blood, family is about showing up." The audience applauded. That was when my parents made their move. Richard and Helen Carter stood from their seats in the middle of the chamber. My father's voice carried across the room. He said, "That's our grandson. We're so proud of you, Noah." The room went silent. Cameras swung toward them. My mother said, "We've been estranged from our daughter and grandson for too long. We want the world to know we love them. We want to be a family again." It was perfect theater, calculated down to the second. The emotional grandparents, the public reconciliation. Who could object to forgiveness? Mayor Reyes looked uncomfortable. She said, "Perhaps this is something that should be discussed privately." Anthony Dawson stood next. He had been sitting near my parents. He said, "I'm Noah's biological father. I made mistakes when I was young. I want to make amends." The journalists were recording everything. This was their redemption story, their second act. I stood up. Every camera turned toward me. I said, "Mayor Reyes, may I speak?" She hesitated, then nodded. I said, "My name is Eva Carter. Let me tell you what family actually means to these people." I walked to the front of the chamber and placed the documents on the podium. I said, 24 years ago, when I was 17 years old and pregnant, my parents gave me 10 minutes to pack and leave. They disconnected my phone. They told me I was an embarrassment. Anthony Dawson told me the pregnancy wasn't supposed to happen and disappeared to California 3 days later. I said I was homeless. I was terrified. Judge Miriam Hale found me outside this courthouse at midnight and took me in. She raised me when my own parents refused. My father tried to interrupt. He said, "That was a long time ago. We've changed. I held up the trust documents. I said, Judge Hale saw this coming. She set up legal protections, a trust fund with exclusion clauses specifically naming these three people, ensuring they can never profit financially from my son's success or mine. She documented their abandonment. I turned to the mayor's staff member operating the audio-visual system. I said, May I play the recording? The staff member nodded and helped me connect the flash drive. I said, Judge Hale left a message. She knew someday they might try exactly this. Miriam's face filled the screens. Her voice filled the chamber. The room watched in silence as she explained everything. The abandonment, the midnight rescue, the legal protections. Her final words to my parents and Anthony. When it ended, the chamber was absolutely quiet. Noah stood and walked to where I was standing. He put his arm around me. He said, Eva Carter is my mother. Liam Bennett is my father. Judge Miriam Hale was my grandmother. These three people taught me everything about integrity and real love. He looked at Richard, Helen, and Anthony. He said, You're strangers to me. You'll remain strangers. Mayor Reyes found her voice. She said, I think we've heard enough. Noah, congratulations on your award. You're clearly the product of remarkable parenting. My parents left quickly, followed by Anthony. No more performance, no more cameras. The chamber's applause swallowed their exit. Karen Fuller approached me afterward. She said, I'm sorry. I should have investigated deeper before running those reconciliation stories. I said, and now you know the truth. That's what matters. She said, would you be willing to talk? On record? I want to write the real story. I said yes, but not about revenge, about the importance of chosen family. 3 months after the ceremony, in the spring of 2025, we opened the Miriam Hale Center for Young Mothers. It was located in the building where my nonprofit had operated for years, now expanded with funding from donors who had heard Noah's story and mine. The center provided housing, education support, legal advocacy, and child care for pregnant teenagers and young mothers who had been abandoned by their families. Everything I had needed, everything Miriam had given me. At the opening ceremony, Noah cut the ribbon. Liam spoke about the legal protections we were offering. I talked about Miriam's legacy. My parents never contacted us again. The public exposure had destroyed their redemption narrative. The restraining orders were finalized without opposition. They returned to their life in Greenwich, their reputation permanently stained by the truth. Anthony Dawson moved to another state. He sent one letter months later that I never opened. Some doors once closed need to stay closed. Karen Fuller wrote a feature series about chosen family, legal protections for abandoned minors, and the long-term impact of parental rejection. It won awards. She became an advocate for policy reform. Noah continued prosecuting corruption cases. He never mentioned his biological family again. He didn't need to. He knew exactly who his family was. One evening, a year after the center opened, I was in Miriam's old study. We had moved some of her furniture to the center as a memorial. Her desk, her bookshelves, her photos. Liam found me there looking at a picture of Miriam holding infant Noah. He said, You okay? I said, I was just thinking about the night she found me. How different my life could have been. He said, You didn't lose everything. You survived. You built something extraordinary. I said, We built something extraordinary. Noah appeared in the doorway. He had stopped by after work, still in his suit and tie. He said, There's a 17-year-old downstairs, just arrived. She's scared. She's 3 months pregnant. Her parents threw her out this morning. I stood up. I said, Then let's go help her. Let's show her what real family looks like. We walked downstairs together. Liam, Noah, and me. The family that chose each other. The family that showed up. In the lobby, a young girl sat with a suitcase, her eyes red from crying, looking lost and alone. I sat down beside her. I said, My name is Eva. You're safe now. We're going to help you through this. She looked at me with the same desperation I had felt 25 years ago. She said, Why would you help me? You don't even know me? I smiled. I had asked Miriam the same question once. I said, Because someone helped me when I had nowhere to go, because I believe in paying forward what was given to me, and because you deserve better than what they gave you. Behind me, I could almost hear Miriam's voice, proud, certain, telling me I had done exactly what she had hoped I would do. Family isn't about blood. Family is about showing up, about choosing to love when the world says to turn away, about building something beautiful from the broken pieces. That's what Miriam taught me. That's what I'm teaching others. That's the legacy that will never be taken away. If you've experienced family estrangement or have your own story of found family, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Your voice matters and your story might help someone else feel less alone. Thank you.